Hello and welcome to Narayana IAS Academy. In this session of the top topics of the week, we'll delve into 6 most interesting and important topics from the Hindu and the Indian Express. So let's explore each and every topic in depth so that you are well prepared and informed for the examination. So let's kick off with the first topic.
The next article is about Quad Summit. Earlier it was decided that Quad Summit in the year 2024 will be held in India and the next year 2025 will be held in USA. But recently it has been announced that these countries are swapping this hosting of summit, and this year 2024 the summit will be held in United States of America hosted by President Joe Biden. Now we need to know what is Quad, and the Quad as an institution becomes very relevant for international relations. So mains GS paper 2 specifically mentions about bilateral, regional and global groupings, Quad being one of them. Now look at this previous year question which was earlier asked on the Quad. Quadrilateral security dialogue is transforming itself into a trade bloc from a military alliance. In present times, discuss for 15 marks. So definitely you need to have a good idea about Quad. Now what is the context or what is exactly happening? When we say Quad, the long form is Quadrilateral Security Dialogue, and it is a group of 4 countries which includes India, Japan, Australia and United States of America. These 4 countries. But why did these 4 countries came together? To understand this, you need to go back to history. If you go back to World War II, you see after World War II, 2 countries emerged as the most powerful countries. One was USA, another was USSR. With time, we observed that even the Western Europe, it started becoming very much powerful. Now, when I say a country is becoming powerful, that means it is becoming powerful in terms of economy, then it is becoming powerful in terms of military, in terms of technology, all these angles. Now, when you look at the Western world, Western countries which includes USA, Britain, Germany, all these Western allies of USA, these countries became very powerful with time. And we said that in the entire world, the power was very much concentrated in the Atlantic and Pacific region. So there is Atlantic Ocean and there is Pacific Ocean. All the countries surrounding it, which included US and its allies, they were the most powerful countries. But now what is happening? In the 21st century, the things are changing. The things are changing in a way that there are many other countries who have become very much powerful, which includes China definitely, which includes India, which includes Indonesia and many other countries. So nowadays we are observing that the power is not now concentrated in Atlantic region, rather it is getting transferred to the Indo-Pacific region. Now when we say Indo-Pacific, it means Indian Ocean and the Pacific Ocean. So if you can imagine Indian Ocean and Pacific Ocean region, the countries surrounding it, it includes India, it includes China, Russia, America, all these countries. So now we are saying the focus of the world will be there for next many years on the Indo-Pacific region. Now look at this angle from the power perspective in the world politics. In the world, there is no world government. So when there is no world government, there is no one power as such. So here what happens that we have made United Nations. We have brought many rules under United Nations. But to implement those rules, you need to ensure that every country accepts those rules. In case there is a country who says, I am not going to accept these rules, then what will you do? Especially if that country is very powerful. Now specifically I am talking about China. If you have seen many a times, China has directly said that I am not going to accept the verdict of UN clause, especially when it comes to South China Sea. They are showing aggression against other countries, against the UN treaties. So that means there is a powerful country who is not ready to accept the rule-based international order. Now here is a problem. Now here, when these things are happening in the Indo-Pacific region, many countries are concerned, especially countries like India or countries like Japan. You see, both of us share border, some kind of border with China. And both countries are having problems with China, and China is showing continuous aggression. So such countries came together. So 4 countries, USA and Australia also. These 4 countries came together to ensure that in the Indo-Pacific region, at least there will be international order. There will be international order which is rule based. So whatever is the rule based on the United Nations Convention, that rule is followed by every country. If China is not listening, we all will come together and make China accept those rules. Now this is the story. So if you say the aim of this Quad is to promote free, open and inclusive Indo-Pacific region, and all these four countries have common interest. You see, all of these countries are democracies and they want that United Nations orders should be maintained. Now, if you look at Quad specifically, it is not a formal military alliance as such. Just like NATO, NATO is a military alliance. If anyone attacks on NATO, all the countries will come together and attack on that country. This is not the case with Quad. Rather, Quad is very much broad. It talks about military to some extent. It also talks about economic development, technological collaboration, climate change, infrastructure, so many things. See, the point is, China is going ahead. China is growing in all these aspects. So these four countries are trying to ensure that we become independent. We do not remain dependent on China altogether for any of these things, economic, technological or any other thing. Now, if you go back to the history, the idea of Quad was first of all introduced by Japanese Prime Minister Shinzo Abe in the year 2007. But at that point of time, Australia withdrew from this proposal because of the pressure of China. But if you see, in the year 2017, the idea of Quad revived again and even Australia was ready to become part of it. You see, in the year 2020, Malabar naval exercise was conducted among these four members. So we can say right now Quad is emerging. Now, what is the importance and relevance of Quad? First of all, obviously, the growing influence of China is a major concern for all of these countries. And China is becoming very aggressive. That is a cause of concern. Second, we want to ensure our maritime security. If you look at India, in the southern part, there is Indian Ocean. And this ocean is very important for our exports and imports. We send many our products to other countries and we bring many other products from there too, from these oceanic angles. So this ocean, its security becomes very important for us. And to maintain that security, India alone is not capable of doing that. We need friends, and those friends will be in the form of Quad. Then there is technological and economic cooperation too. See, India needs technologies. India wants that our economy should grow, so we must have some kind of agreements with other countries. And that is possible when Quad becomes a big group and becomes very comprehensive kind of group which includes these economic cooperation too. So we can cooperate in cyber security, 5G, artificial intelligence, and we are already dependent on China. We can reduce that dependency and become dependent on Quad, which is very much good for us. Then we can talk about humanitarian assistance and disaster relief. See, in case there is some kind of tsunami in this region, and let's say Japan is affected or India is affected, in that case, this entire Quad group can come together to help each other. Then climate change, infrastructural development. See, climate change, if you want to take any kind of action, China also needs to take some action. China is a big polluter too. So if you want China to reduce emissions, you have to put pressure on China. Only if powerful countries come together and put pressure on China, in that case, China will accept it. And when we talk about infrastructure, China came up with a plan of BRI, that is Belt and Road Initiative, in which China is building infrastructure and putting many small countries under heavy debts. Now, these countries are taking debt because they do not have any money and China is giving them money. If Quad countries come together and they start giving debts to these countries and they don't go for debt trap diplomacy like China, then these countries will also be saved to a good extent. Now, India has a dilemma to go ahead with Quad and SCO. SCO means Shanghai Cooperation Organization. See, this organization India is part of, and this organization includes China, Russia and many other countries. So you see, when we look at Quad, it is like a US-led initiative. And when we look at SCO, it seems China-led initiative. And interestingly, India is in a position wherein India is part of both sides, which is very much contradictory. So India wants to maintain its autonomy, wants to maintain its non-alignment, although it is very difficult. Because in SCO, I said there is Russia also, and right now Russia is at war with Ukraine. Ukraine is being supported by USA. So it becomes very tough for India to balance these relations. Then there are economic considerations. We are saying that we are building a bloc against China, but we are already dependent economically on China. So there can be some repercussions in economic terms. At last, there is security angle and multilateral angle. See, if you look at the security angle of India, I said in the southern part we have ocean, but in the northern part we have continents. When it comes to continental security of India, India is focusing on SCO. And when it comes to maritime region and the security of maritime region, India is focusing on Quad. So this is the major idea. Now, what is the way forward? When the summits will be held, what India can propose or what Quad countries need to do? First of all, they need to clarify their objectives. What exactly they wish to do. So in terms of security angle or in terms of regional cooperation, whatever, what kind of challenges they are going to address, all these they need to mention in an objective paper. Secondly, they can expand the regional cooperation. See, we only have 4 countries as part of Quad. If we bring many more countries, the countries of ASEAN region or the countries from Western Europe, all these can be made part of it if they too have similar kind of interests. Then we can go for institutionalization of Quad. Institutionalization means right now Quad is in the form of just a forum where only a meeting is taking place every year. It is not an organization like United Nations. So if we institutionalize it, then we will have a good structure and things will be done in a more organized manner. All these things can be done. And again, obviously, we need to strengthen ties with ASEAN and other nations. We can make them part of Quad.
If you talk about the third article for the day, which is there in Indian Express Explained section, Mpox is in news. And this article is talking about North-South divide, how Africa is the epicenter of Mpox and how they are suffering a lot. But when it comes to getting vaccines, these African countries, they're not getting the vaccine. Why? One of the major reason is, directly or indirectly we can state it as their poverty. So the North, so-called North, the richer countries, they are getting the vaccines, although Africa or African countries are majorly affected by it. So again, here we can understand how poverty can impact or how this North-South divide is playing a crucial role when it comes to addressing this Mpox. So we'll have a look at this. We'll have a look at this article and questions related to COVID-19 pandemic and these kind of pandemics, they have been asked by UPSC in the past. So what is the point here? So we'll talk about what is the current context. We'll talk about Mpox, monkeypox, what are different strains, which countries are affected by it, what is the issue. We have talked about the issue now. We know the gist of the issue. And the gist of the issue is poverty. People say, no, money is not everything. But this article is making you realize that if money is not even everything, but still it's a very substantial part of major things. So poverty is like impacting Africa in more ways than one when we are talking about Mpox. So the rapid spread of Mpox has become a major global health concern because it is getting transmitted at a very high pace. Sexual transmission is a major issue in countries like Congo, and we'll talk about it, including via sexual activity. Despite Africa being the epicenter of outbreak, we have talked about this thing and we have talked about it in a very emotional manner. Vaccines were delayed in reaching the region due to high cost, reliance on donations and bureaucratic delays in approvals from the WHO. Again, these are fancy words. Hope you are understanding. Mainly because they are poor countries. Most of these countries which are getting impacted by Mpox in Africa, poor, they are not getting the vaccine. That is a basic gist of it. WHO's slow approval processes and a lack of urgency from high-income countries further compounded the delay in Africa's vaccine process. Hope you understood what is happening here. So now let's talk about the issue at hand. Mpox, monkeypox. What is it? It is a viral disease caused by virus. First recorded in DRC, Democratic Republic of Congo. A homework for you. Locate this DRC, Democratic Republic of Congo in your world map. Two clades is clade is a fancy version for types, and there are two clades and both of them are in Africa only. Clade 1 originating in Central Africa, clade 2 originating in West Africa, and then there will be A1 means 1A, 1B, 2A, 2B. Hope you're understanding. Sub-variants will also come into picture. But again, we don't need to do PhD here. We have to understand the issue at hand, which you have got a gist now. That poverty is a curse.
Symptoms, rash or mucus. So what happens when you get monkeypox or mpox? What happens in that scenario? So you will have certain rashes and they will keep on increasing. The intensity will keep on increasing. You will have fever, you will have headache, muscle aches. All these common symptoms are associated with mpox as well. But the intensity will keep on increasing with each passing day. Transmission, human to human transmission is possible. Sexual transmission is a major issue in African countries like Congo. So here we are talking about, and other modes are also there, human to human mode. Like let's say we are facing each other face to face and we are very close to each other even though we are not doing anything. Even then the transmission of mpox can happen. Then indirect contact with contaminated objects like clothing, bedding or towels. So now here the issue, vaccine availability and access. Because most of these African countries which are facing or bearing the brunt of mpox, they are poor and the vaccine costs are high. Hope you are understanding, hope you are connecting the dots here. High vaccine costs, delayed access in Africa, especially Democratic Republic of Congo. 3 vaccines are there. Modified Vaccinia Ankara and then MVA. And that is LC16M8 Japan and ACAM 2000. Again, you don't need to remember all these things. Just remember 3 kind of vaccines are being used. It's not like single vaccine we are relying on, but even these 3 kind of vaccines, most of the time the high income countries, the northern countries, the so-called northern countries of the world, they are taking it. African countries are lagging behind. African nations rely on donations and WHO approvals, causing further delays in vaccine procurement, because in WHO also, these so-called rich countries, they are having a hegemony. Bureaucratic delays in WHO's emergency use listing. Again, these are technical terms. You don't need to pay too much heed here. Just understand there is a delay when it comes to approval by WHO. There is a delay when it comes to donations, and all these things are happening because the gist is poverty is a curse. So ethics and equity in global health. Vaccine inequity highlights the disparity between high income and low income countries. Africa, despite being the epicenter, faced vaccine shortages due to global prioritization of developed nations. Why? Because they are rich. That is the basic gist of it. Lack of timely access to vaccines for African countries raises ethical concerns about global solidarity and fairness. And the North-South divide is evident as low-income nations continue to be marginalized in global health crisis, and this has to be sorted out by WHO. That is the basic purpose of WHO, to bridge this North-South divide, and they're not doing it, especially in this particular Mpox case. So what they should actually do? Accelerate WHO approval processes. You are taking too much time. People are dying. People are suffering in Africa. So accelerate this whole approval process, WHO. Improve global vaccine distribution. Don't just focus on the rich North. Pay attention to the poor South as well. Boost local vaccine production. Start making these vaccines in African countries only. Enhance preparedness and promote ethical global health governance. These things has to be done, and they have to be done at the earliest if we don't want it to be like transitioning from an epidemic to a pandemic to something of very wider ramification.
Friends, the title of the topic is UAE and India ties. So in this article, you'll understand about the different dimensions in the India and the UAE relations. You can map this under both prelims as well as mains. Prelims, why? Because a map-based question can be asked in the UPSC examination. And for the mains, a question can be asked on the India-UAE ties, or a question can be asked on India and the Middle East ties. And in the context of India and Middle East ties, how important are the relations, or how important it is for India to have good relations with UAE, right? So this is how it can be important for the UPSC examination. Previous question asked in the 2022, how will I2U2, right, grouping transform India's position in the global geopolitics? In I2U2, we have India, Israel, UAE and USA, right? So this is one of the developmental initiative, right? Infrastructural initiative. So how will this help India to strengthen India's position in the geopolitics, right? So a question of this nature can be asked in the UPSC examination. Now, what is the context? The context is that the Crown Prince of Abu Dhabi recently visited India. Now, the frequent meeting of the high-level politicians between both the countries, it underscores the growing ties between both the countries, right? In the last 4 to 5 years, the Prime Minister of our country and the Prime Minister of UAE have met frequently. This shows how both the countries are attaching importance to one another, right? And both the countries share historical ties, political ties, cultural ties, economic ties, and both the countries are collaborating at various levels. So we'll try to understand these levels or these dimensions under India and the UAE relations. Now see, this is the location of United Arab Emirates, this one. Now what is the reason behind showing this diagram or this map? Because the map based question, UPSC for example, UPSC Middle East is a very important country. For India, Middle East is a very important country. So a question or UPSC has a tendency to ask questions on the Middle East, right? For example, UPSC might ask which are the countries bordering, let's say UAE, which are the countries bordering Qatar, which are the countries bordering Saudi Arabia, which are the countries bordering Persian Gulf, which are the countries bordering Gulf of Oman, which are the countries bordering Red Sea, right? So Bab-e-Mandab Strait divides which of the two countries? So there are so many questions UPSC can ask. Countries bordering Mediterranean Sea. And that's the reason understanding map, by hearting the location of countries, surrounding geographical locations, very, very important for your prelims examination, right? So make sure you are very thorough with the Middle East or West Asia map, right? Okay, let's proceed. Now talking about the historical background of both India and the UAE relations. Now the relationship between both the countries, they are rooted in deep cultural, political, economic, right, ties. So in 1971, the Federation of UAE was established. Then in the year 1972, right, diplomatic relations were established between both the nations, diplomatic relations, right. Then in 1981, the Prime Minister of our country, Indira Gandhi, made a visit to the UAE, right. But then in the year 2015, after a gap of 24 years, the current Prime Minister Narendra Modi became the Prime Minister to pay a visit to UAE, and this highlights the growing ties between both the nations. And then if you see in the recent 8 years, there have been frequent visits by the Indian Prime Minister to UAE and the visit of the UAE Prime Minister to India. It shows how both the countries are understanding the importance of one another. In 2017, the relationship was elevated to comprehensive strategic partnership. Now, these are some of the key terms that you are supposed to write in the examination. What is comprehensive strategic partnership? Strategic, which means important partner. Comprehensive, which means when two countries are cooperating at various levels, political level, trade, economic, cultural, right? Then at the international level, geopolitical level, then energy or let's say environment, fighting against climate change, cooperating for climate change. So when both the countries or when two countries cooperate at various levels, then both the countries elevate their partnership to comprehensive strategic partnership. Given the importance or given the area of cooperation between both the nations, both the countries have elevated their partnership to comprehensive strategic partnership. I hope you understood what do you mean by comprehensive strategic partnership. For example, for India, USA is very, very important. So yes, with USA we have comprehensive strategic partnership. With Russia, we do have. For Japan, we do have comprehensive strategic partnership. Israel, we do have, right? Now, when the Crown Prince of Abu Dhabi visited India, there were a few agreements signed between both nations. The first one is the civil nuclear technology. Now, what is the civil nuclear technology? Now, India has an expertise in the nuclear desalination. What is this nuclear desalination? Nuclear desalination is a technology where clean water is produced. How? By desalinating the seawater. Now, if you see UAE, it is surrounded by sea. So, UAE faces this problem of clean drinking water. So, using nuclear power, we are desalinating the seawater and producing clean water, which is very, very important for UAE sustainable development. So, both the countries signed agreement in civil nuclear technology. Then both the countries have reinforced that commitment in renewable energy to fight against or to fight for climate change, to fight so that we are not harming the environment, right? For example, both the countries are focusing on renewable energy sectors like solar and wind power. So, both the countries are collaborating to focus more and more on the renewable sector, moving away from the traditional sectors like, let's say, the coal-based power generation, right? So, it shows that both the countries are committed to climate change. Education and innovation. Now, the Sheikh Khalid of Abu Dhabi inaugurated the first overseas campus of the IIT in Abu Dhabi. It shows that both the countries are also collaborating in the education department or sector, right? Then, based on the success of Comprehensive Economic Partnership Agreement, which was implemented in 2022, the two countries discussed expansion of economic ties. Now, as both the countries are very important and collaborating at various levels, various areas, both the countries committed that they will take the trade relations to 100 billion non-oil trade target by 2030, which means by 2030, non-oil trade, both the countries have kept the target to $100 billion. And in this $100 billion, oil component or oil will not be included. And then both the countries are also collaborating or cooperating so that they can deal in their own currencies. That is, we have rupee, and UAE, the local currency in UAE is dirham. So, we are trying to use more and more local currencies for our trade, thereby reducing our dependence on US dollar, right? So, these are the key agreements signed during the recent. But now let us try to understand why is UAE important for our country. First is geostrategic importance. Now, security and counter-terrorism. UAE is very important for regional security. So, if you look at the location of UAE, so let me just show you the map of UAE once again. So, this is UAE. This is the Persian Gulf, right? So, we trade with many countries that borders the Persian Gulf. Then here we have the Gulf of Oman. We have Arabian Sea. So, for regional security, Abu Dhabi or UAE is a very, very important country for our country. So, in order to make sure that the region is peaceful, Middle East very important for our country. Then, in order to counter threats like terrorism and piracy in Arabian Sea, UAE is a very, very important for our country. Which means if the region is not peaceful, try to understand, if the region is not peaceful, which region? Middle East, right? Then there won't be trade, or the trade or the goods that we import from Middle East, for example, oil, right? The export of oil or oil, it might get delayed. So, if you do not have oil, because there are many industries that are dependent on oil. Are you getting my point? So, if this industry stop functioning, why? Because there is no oil. And why there is no oil? Because Middle East is disturbed. That's the reason, in order to make or in order to ensure that the region is peaceful, stable, Middle East or UAE is very, very important for our country. So, both the countries are also collaborating, cooperating to fight against some of the major challenges like terrorism or let's say piracy in the Arabian Sea, right? And that's the reason both the countries participate in joint military exercises such as Desert Cyclone, Zai Talwar and Desert Eagle, which means the defense forces of both the countries are collaborating so that in case the situation demands, the armed forces of both the countries would collaborate, would cooperate to fight against the threat. Energy security. Now, UAE is one of India's key suppliers of crude oil, ranking as the 6th largest exporter to India. At the same time, UAE was the first international partner to invest in India's strategic petroleum reserve. So, India has come up with its own policy of strategic petroleum reserve. Now, this policy of India, wherein India intends to store oil underground. In case the region is disturbed, let's say for example, we do not get oil or there is delay happening, right? So, in such case, we have our stored oil which we can use in case there is a geopolitical conflict and there is a delay in getting the oil or supplying the oil. Then we have our own storage facility. Now, to build this huge storage system, UAE has agreed to invest to develop strategic reserves. Now, this is a very, very key term, strategic petroleum reserve. Then, geo-economic importance. Now, UAE is India's 3rd largest trading partner. Bilateral trade is 60 billion. The goal is to take it to $100 billion by 2030, excluding the trade in oil. Very important. UAE's investment in India has reached up to $12 billion. It spans several sectors like construction, energy and consumer electronics. Now, there are around 3.5 million Indians who are staying in UAE. And these people send remittances. Remittances, the money that they supply or send to their families. For example, let's say there's a person who's working in UAE, Abu Dhabi. Now, he's sending money to his family. When he sends money, he's sending in US dollar. And this US dollar is very, very important to maintain or balance of payment, right? Then gateway to Africa. The UAE's strategic location provides India with access to African markets. Now, in order to penetrate into the African markets, UAE again is a very, very important partner to our country. Why? Because UAE has made deep inroads in the African region. So, we can use UAE to connect more to the African countries, right? This will help the Indian businessmen to penetrate deep into the African market. Then geopolitical importance, regional stability. I explained you why it is important for India to see Middle East stable. For example, in order to make or ensure the Middle East is stable, UAE is equally an important country. For example, what is this Abraham Accord? Now, Abraham Accord is an initiative which tries to improve the relation between Israel and other Middle East countries. Now, historically, Israel and the Middle Eastern countries do not have good relations, right? They do not share good relations. And to improve the ties between Israel and the Middle East countries, Abraham Accord intends or the objective of Abraham Accord is to normalize the ties between Israel and the Middle Eastern countries. And UAE again is an important country to implement the Abraham Accord. Then India and UAE also collaborate at various multilateral platforms like the United Nations, I2U2. This enhances India's diplomatic leverage. Now, through United Nations or I2U2, we are trying to counter China's dominance in the region by coming or by making ourselves as a competitor of China, or by competing against China in the region, or by preventing China from making deep inroads, or by competing against China, right? So, this is why UAE is very, very important for our country. I hope you understood why UAE is important for our country. Now, the challenges in India and the UAE relations. First is the non-tariff barrier, which means there are some barriers in the trade relations between India and UAE. For example, the UAE's sanitary and phytosanitary and technical barriers to trade. Now, what is the sanitary and phytosanitary and technical barriers? For example, UAE has certain parameters or indicators to import the goods from the outside country, which means, let's say for example, India exports vegetables. Now, these vegetables should meet a certain level in terms of hygiene, or in terms of use of the chemicals. Because of these stringent measures or strict measures, the Indian goods are not imported or accepted in UAE. So, whenever India is importing, let's say anything from the outside country, we focus on quality. It should be of good quality. Same is the case with UAE. So, whenever India exports food items to UAE, there are very stringent measures in UAE, because of which many of the Indian products get rejected. For example, poultry, meat and processed foods. Because of not matching the quality, the export gets rejected. Second is China's checkbook diplomacy. Now, China has made deep roads in the Middle Eastern region. It is very difficult for India to compete against China. Why? Because China has invested massively in the Middle Eastern region. So, it is very difficult for India to compete against China in the Middle East. Why? Because of the China's domination in the region. Third, Arab-Iran conflict. In the Middle East, there are three important countries. One, Israel. The other one is Iran. And third one is Saudi Arabia. Now, all the three countries are not favorably disposed against each other, right? So, Israel has a problem against Iran and Saudi Arabia. Iran has a problem against Israel and Saudi. Saudi has a problem against Israel and Iran. They are not favorably disposed to other country. Now, India has good ties with each and every country. And that's the reason it is very difficult or challenging for our country to maintain diplomatic ties with every country. For example, now India so far has been successful in balancing her relation with Israel, Iran and Saudi Arabia. So, whenever we are engaging with Iran, we make sure that the engagement is not affecting our relation with Saudi Arabia or Israel. Same is the case with every country. But given the isolation of Iran more and more, this is a challenge or diplomatic challenge for our country again to balance or navigate the changing situation in the Middle Eastern region. Now, what is kafala system? As I told you, there are many Indians who are working in UAE. Almost or around 3.5 million Indians are working in Middle East. And majority of the people are associated with blue collar jobs. Now, what are blue collar jobs? They are related to low skilled jobs. Now, under this kafala system, whenever a blue collared person or worker goes to UAE, he comes totally under the control of the employer, which means, let's say for example, a company has hired an Indian person. Now, this company will totally control this person. He will have his passport, which means the person who is working under this kafala system cannot change his job, which means these people are subjected to more and more exploitation, right? Why? Because the employer has a lot of power and control over their employees. They cannot change their jobs. Imagine, you cannot change your job. You cannot flee your country or move to other country. Why? Because the passport is with the employer, right? So, this is another system. Then UAE-Pakistan relations. Now, given the financial support UAE gives to Pakistan, the concern India has is that the financial support that UAE gives to Pakistan can be used against India. So, this is another challenge in the UAE-India relations. So, way forward. What is the way forward? We have to address the non-tariff barriers. That is, we have to establish a mechanism through which transparency can be ensured. We have to establish a mechanism, a platform wherein the traders from both the countries can engage and meet the requirement of another country as with respect to sanitary and phytosanitary standards. Strategic dialogue platform. Now, given the importance of both the countries or given the importance of one country to the other, we can focus on this 2+2 dialogue mechanism. What is this 2+2 dialogue mechanism? Now, this 2+2 dialogue mechanism is one of the initiatives or mechanism through which the foreign and defense minister of one country interacts with the foreign and defense minister of other country. The countries which are strategically important, right, they sign such 2+2 dialogue mechanism with the other country. For example, India has this 2+2 dialogue mechanism with USA, with Russia, right? Then we have with Australia, we have with Japan. So the author of the article tries to suggest that a 2+2 dialogue mechanism can be considered for India and Iran, thereby showing the strategic importance both the countries attach to one another. And then kafala system reforms. Reforms have to be undertaken in the kafala system, for which India can engage more and more with UAE and push UAE to undertake reforms in the kafala system so that the Indian people are not exploited. And last, boosting soft power, right? For example, we can leverage its cultural and diaspora links. For example, Indian movies are loved in UAE. There are many Indian celebrities who are far more famous in UAE, right? There are people-to-people ties. So these soft power dimension can be leveraged to strengthen the ties between India and the UAE, right? So by working on the way forward, we can strengthen our ties and ensure that India and UAE have a more ground to cover and will collaborate in more and more dimensions, more and more sectors to strengthen the bilateral relation. I hope you understood each and every dimension of the article, right?
If we talk about the last article of the day, India's sickle cell challenge. Sickle cell disease, sickle cell anemia, we'll talk about it. But there's a very interesting pattern here. Generally, these sickle cell disease, tribal people are getting impacted by it the most. What is the reason behind it? Why tribal people are getting impacted by sickle cell disease the most? That is a very interesting question. And once we are done with this article, you will understand it. And let me tell you right now only. So tribal areas, they were generally infested by malaria. So I'm just telling you a reason, scientific reason, why we generally witness sickle cell disease among tribal population. So many of these tribal populations earlier were like infected or sterilized to a certain extent by malaria. So the body developed genetic mutation, and that genetic mutation developed in the form of sickle cell disease, which was much less, you know, the symptoms were much lesser as compared to malaria. So in a way, the sickle cell disease developing among tribal was a reaction against malaria. I hope you're understanding it. And that's why we are witnessing major sickle cell cases among tribal population. So this is one of the very interesting aspect of this article. So questions related to Zika virus and diseases, they have been asked by UPSC in the past. So what is the context here? Sickle cell disease remains a formidable challenge in India, where its burden is significant, particularly among tribal population. Now we know the reason why tribal populations are majorly impacted by sickle cell disease. Hope you're understanding it. Once we're done with this article, you will understand more about sickle cell disease. You will understand more about RBC versus WBC rather. What is red blood cell? What are like white blood cell? What is the function of red blood cell? So here, red blood cell, if we talk about RBCs, what they do? They carry oxygen from lung throughout the body, and that is necessary for our survival among other factors. Now, if we talk about WBCs, they are generally fighting fighting against rather diseases. So that is one of the major differences between RBC and WBC rather. So RBC, what they're doing? Supplying oxygen from lung to different parts of the body. WBC, white blood corpuscles, what they are doing? They are fighting against infections, right? So sickle cell disease, which is also known as sickle cell anemia, is a genetic disorder. Please understand this. And people, let's say my mother, she has sickle cell disease. My father, she has sickle cell disease. Then in that scenario, I have a very high probability of catching sickle cell anemia or sickle cell disease. So it's a genetic disorder. And now we also understand why it is impacting tribal people the most, because this genetic mutation happened in them to fight against malaria. So that affects hemoglobin, a protein in RBC, which carries oxygen through the body. Normally, RBCs are, now this is a very interesting phenomena. What happens in sickle cell disease? And there's a very fine image which can explain you the whole thing. So RBCs are disc-shaped, and that way they can easily move through the blood vessels. Now let's look at this map. So RBC, they're disc-shaped and they're easily moving throughout the blood vessels. Now let's look at the other part. So when you have sickle cell disease, then in that scenario, it will become crescent or sickle shaped. So now the shape is something like this. In this scenario, if you again go back, in this scenario, it becomes very difficult for it to go through the blood vessel, unlike the previous scenario. And that's what happened in sickle cell. And once you do not have enough RBCs, you won't have enough oxygen in different parts of the body. You will feel tiredness. You will feel like sleeping all the time. So maybe if you feel like sleeping all the time, maybe you are suffering or you are having some variant of sickle cell disease, or RBC is not proper in your body. So you can even eat things which can increase RBC count in your body, right? So hope you understood what is happening in sickle cell disease. The shapes of RBCs are changing because of it is not getting transmitted to different blood vessels. And when there are lesser RBCs in your body, which is responsible for transporting, like passing oxygen, among other things, you will feel dizziness, you will feel sleepy. So what are different types? Sickle cell disease exists in two forms. First is sickle cell trait, in which you will not exhibit any disease or symptoms. You will live normally. Second is characterized by symptoms, when the magnitude of sickle cell will increase. In this scenario, what you will have, you will feel again dizziness and all those things we'll talk about. Now, cause. The cause of sickle cell disease is a defective gene called sickle cell gene. So it's a genetic disorder. We are continuously talking about it. And what we have discussed, if my father, if my mother, both of them are having this particular gene, there's a very high probability that I will catch it. So a person will be born with sickle cell disease only if two genes are inherited, one from the mother and one from the father. So let's say my mother is infected or has that particular gene rather, sickle cell gene, my father does not, then there is very less probability that I'll be having sickle cell. So symptoms, early stage, tiredness, swollen hands, later stage, severe pain, organ damage and infection, because again, you are having lack of oxygen because of the issue associated with RBCs. Treatment is either you do stem cell transplantation, you remove those sickle cell genes, or there are treatments which can reduce the symptoms, we can reduce the tiredness or the pain, which can lessen the complications, right? And prevalence of SCD, if we talk about sickle cell disease. So India has second highest disease burden. African countries are bearing the brunt of it, but 1 in 86 birth among scheduled tribe. And now we also know why tribal population are bearing the brunt of it, because they have this genetic disorder or mutation has happened as a reaction to malaria. So with higher rates in central, western and southern India. And government initiative, National Sickle Cell Anemia Elimination Program, or mission rather, we have focused on. And in that, what we have talked about, that we will eliminate sickle cell genetic transmission by the year 2047. But this is actually like 20-21 years ahead, if not more, right? And that is actually more. So we are talking about 23 years down the line. So, but still, this is a genetic disorder. It cannot go away like within few seconds or minutes. So it will take its time. And hopefully by 2047, we will not be having any more cases of sickle cell genetic transmission.
So the next article is about role of artificial intelligence in the healthcare sector. The government of India is thinking about increasing the role of artificial intelligence as a technology in the healthcare sector of India. Specifically, they are talking about primary healthcare sector. So we will understand this role in detail. This topic becomes important for GS paper 2, which talks about health, and GS paper 3, which talks about technologies, specifically the emerging technologies, and AI is one of them. Now look at this previous year question. It says, with the present state of development, artificial intelligence can effectively do which of the following? Number 1, bring down electricity consumption in industrial units, create meaningful short stories and songs, disease diagnosis, text-to-speech conversion, and wireless transmission of electrical energy. So this is simply application-based question. If you understand the artificial intelligence as a technology and its applications, you can answer this question. Okay. Now moving ahead, what is the context? Government of India is considering a proposal. That proposal says that we can build an AI-powered system, a complete system, which can provide 24/7 primary healthcare to every Indian living in India. Now to build this, we need to focus more on artificial intelligence as a technology. Now first of all, what is artificial intelligence? We can understand the intelligence part of it first. Whenever we use the term intelligence, we associate it with human beings. We say that there are so many species on this planet, but we human beings rule on this planet just because we have got this intelligence. Now, when we say intelligence, what does this mean? First of all, the ability to take decisions. Not every species is able to take decisions. Even if when you are giving your examinations, you are taking decisions. You read the question, you think, you come up with different patterns, and then you come to a conclusion or a particular decision. If you give the same paper to the any other species, for example, any other animal, he might not be able to do that. Secondly, you can solve different kinds of problems which you are facing. Not everyone is able to do this. And you can learn from your experiences. So whenever a new experience comes, you make changes, you modify your knowledge. And you can also recognize complicated patterns. So when you are looking at different data, different informations which is coming to you, you can recognize that. So we are saying all of this is part of your intelligence. And this intelligence is existing in human beings in a natural way. Now, when we look at any other thing, for example, any non-living thing, for example, a computer or a robot, the computer is also intelligent, but it is not that intelligent like human beings. So we thought that we will build the computers in such a way that they too have intelligence just like human beings. And that will be named as artificial intelligence, AI. So AI is nothing but the ability of machines, especially computers, to mimic human intelligence. They will also be able to take decisions just like we humans are taking. So everything they can do just like human beings. So we can say artificial intelligence is one of the most beneficial as well as most dangerous technology. Dangerous why? Because AI is going to become more powerful than human beings. So it can also be dangerous. Now this AI can be classified in two different categories. One is weak AI. Weak AI means this AI only has ability to do some particular task. I'll give you the example. You must have heard about Siri or Alexa. Now if you give them some command, they will execute it. They will come up with some kind of information. They will do the task which you tell them. So this is a narrow AI or weak AI. It does not have all the abilities of human beings, but it is way better than a normal computer. Even we can talk about facial recognition technology. Now you must have heard about this technology being used in China. What it does, it uses cameras and it recognizes your face. From your face, it will understand who this person is. It will recognize everything about that person. Now this is artificial intelligence, but I am saying it is a weaker one. We will call an AI as a strong one or the general artificial intelligence when it has equivalent ability just like human beings. So for example, if you build a robot and if that robot is capable of doing everything that a human being is doing, then that will be called a strong AI robot. Clear? So these are the two categories. Now AI as a technology can be used in multiple sectors. You can use it in the automobiles. For example, you have a car. You can build a self-driving car. So this is possible with AI technology. You can use it in manufacturing. Right now, whatever manufacturing we are doing, they can do it on their own. We do not need to do anything. We design the product, you do not need to do that. The computer will take care of it. Then you can go for gaming, you can go for government sectors, you can go for healthcare, finance, education, business. So there are so many sectors in which artificial intelligence can be used. Now in this article, we are going to focus specifically on this healthcare sector. Now when we look at healthcare, the major focus lies on the disease diagnosis. See, if you have any kind of problem, you reach out to the doctor and doctor starts doing the diagnosis. So what doctor will do? He will ask you multiple questions. What have you eaten? What were you doing? Everything. And from all these records or all these datas, he will try to come to a conclusion that this person has this particular disease. And this is called diagnosis. Now, if you look at artificial intelligence, we are saying that AI can do this task even better than a doctor, because doctor will ask 3, 4, 5 questions. The AI can get all the information related to that patient. For example, if that patient's father has some kind of a disease, for example, asthma, AI already knows that. The AI will also know that this person has been eating something since last 20 years. Even if the person is not telling, the data is already there. So in that case, we are saying it is better than a doctor when it comes to disease diagnosis. Then secondary, personalized treatment plans. Now, when a disease has been diagnosed, what will doctor do? He will prescribe some kind of a treatment to you, a therapy or treatment. Now, he has used all the knowledge he has gained from his medical field and used it to provide you this kind of prescription. Now, look at AI. If a doctor can read 50 books, AI can read thousands and lakhs of books. It will have that much data. So, we are saying it can even work better when it comes to this treatment plans, and a better plan than a doctor can be provided over here. Third, we are talking about medical imaging. So you must have done your X-rays or MRIs or CT scans. Those CT scans, that data is used by the doctor to understand the exact problem in your maybe for example your bones. So even if doctor is physically checking that, the AI can check the micro details better than the doctor. So even there are different patterns, there are different mechanisms in your body that could be understood better by artificial intelligence. Then fourth, AI virtual assistants. Now you must have seen there are many customer care websites on which there is a chat box. That chat box is run by artificial intelligence. You can ask any question to that chat box and it will provide you instant answers. Now when it comes to medical field or healthcare sector, you can provide a 24/7 available virtual assistant. So even if in India we do not have many doctors available, still AI can provide you at least basic information, basic prescriptions, and it will be available 24/7. A very good thing. Then moving ahead, we are concerned about this drug discovery. See, if you remember when COVID-19 came, we waited for a long time for the vaccines to be developed or some kind of drugs to be provided. Now, the discovery of these drugs or the development of these vaccines, it is a complex phenomena that requires lot of efforts, and most of that work can be done by artificial intelligence. Why? Because you see, this kind of work requires you to deal with lot of data. The data set will be very large. If human beings start doing it, then in that case the time required will be very high. Maybe humans are not capable of studying all those data in one go, but artificial intelligence can do that. So we are saying the discovery of drug will become very easy. Next, remote patient monitoring. See, there is a chance that the doctor is living in the city of Hyderabad, and let's say the patient is living in a particular village which is very far from Hyderabad. In that case, if doctor wants to monitor what is happening with his patient, he can get the real-time data. Real-time means what is happening right now. This real-time data related to his heartbeats, what is the heart rate, what is the blood pressure, what is the sleep pattern, everything. He does not even need to ask the patient. Automatically, he will get that data through artificial intelligence. So we'll call it a very good system. Then there is robotics in surgery. See, whenever doctors go for surgery, they are doing it physically. They are making some changes in your body or organs. Now here, if we have robots, those robots, if they can do it more precisely than doctors, we can say that the surgeries will be more or less successful in 99 or maybe 100% terms. So this is a good thing. So if you can now imagine, there is role of AI in healthcare sector, and we can actually build a good healthcare sector with this AI technology. Now, we have some international examples which show that many countries are showing interest in bringing AI in the healthcare sector. Just to give you an example, in Israel, they have this company called Zebra Medical Vision. This company detects diseases in the medical imaging. So we talked about that CT scan, MRI, all that. It uses that data and detects the disease automatically. No need of any doctor as such. Then if you go to Germany, there is this application called Ada Health. This application provides medical advice. What it does, it will use entire history of your medical data. So maybe when you were of 1 year child, that time what kind of diseases you had, what was your health, what was your weight, everything, and the data till present time, everything will be used, and using that it will provide you some kind of advice related to your health. So these are good examples, and there are many more such examples on international flora. Now, if we talk about the current state of artificial intelligence in India's healthcare, what is the current status? So first thing, India is now thinking about becoming a leader in the healthcare sector and specifically bringing AI technology in healthcare sector. See, if you look at all the developing countries, India usually becomes the leader of these developing countries. And here, if you look at the role of AI, you can say at least 25 to 35 billion dollars will be added in our GDP by year 2025 if we start using artificial intelligence in the healthcare sector. So we can say even our economy will be boosted parallel to our healthcare sector. Now, even we too have so many startups which are already using this AI technology. For example, this Healthify Me, this particular company, they provide personalized assistance related to your diet plan. What should you eat, what kind of fitness information you require, that will be provided by them. Then there is this Niramai. Niramai provides the detection of breast cancer in the early stage. So these are just two examples. There are many such startups emerging in India which are using AI in the healthcare sector. Okay. Now, let's talk about the challenges and the risks associated with the AI technology, specifically in the healthcare sector. First of all, you need lot of data, especially you need the data of patients. So that data will include every information, the personal information of that person. Now, when you're taking that information, what about the rights of that person? What about the privacy right of that person? There is a chance the data is collected in a hospital of all the patients. Now, if a hacker comes up and takes control of this particular data, what about your privacy? What about your security? So we are concerned about this sensitive patient data. If someone who does not have any authority to access your data, see, doctors have the authority to check your data, but no other person has that access, should not have that access. But if the person takes control of it, that could be very harmful to you. Then, second issue is related to the bias and inequality. Now, how the bias can come into picture? See, artificial intelligence is nothing but a kind of computer. And to computer, whatever data we provide, it will get that data, it will process that data. Now see, if all the data which is being provided to artificial intelligence comes from the Western countries or specifically USA, let's say, and because there is white people majority or white people are giving data to artificial intelligence, there is a chance that these white people, if they have some kind of biases towards black people, then you will see even this artificial intelligence will develop some kind of biases towards black people. Whenever it gives information, it will also give information in such a manner which shows some kind of discrimination towards these people. So that is a chance. Then there is lack of transparency when it comes to decision making. See, the one thing that differentiates AI from any other technology is its ability to take decisions. And now the problem is that we do not know how AI actually takes decisions. See, we humans take decisions and we know how we are actually thinking. For example, when you are giving the test, you read the question, you think in a particular manner and then come to a conclusion that this is the answer. There is a fixed process of thinking over there. But how AI is doing, we don't know. So let's say, for example, there was a movie called Student of the Year, in which the student does not know the answer. So what he does, he just think about any option and marks it as the answer. So most of the time you too do that. So here we are saying if artificial intelligence is also doing the similar kind of thing and we do not know how this particular technology decides, how its decision making process actually works, then that is not a good thing we are saying. Then moving ahead, in case this decision of AI goes wrong, who will be responsible? In case you have used this AI and you are going for a surgery of a patient, and because of a wrong decision made by artificial intelligence, the patient died. then who will be responsible? That's a questionable thing, right? Then moving ahead, we can talk about regulatory challenges. See, in India, we have different laws, different regulations for everything, almost everything. But artificial intelligence is an emerging technology. So right now, whatever laws and regulations we have, they are not well equipped to manage all the challenges that we are facing from artificial intelligence. So we are seeing we need to actually either update our laws or come up with new laws. Then there are some challenges with the integration of artificial intelligence. See, we are saying that we will integrate, we'll use the AI in our healthcare sector. But healthcare sector is already there. The machines that are being used, those machines are already there in our healthcare sector, or we can say in the private hospitals. Now, are you going to remove all those machines and bring artificial intelligence into it? Or you are going to integrate it? How will you integrate if that software is not able to, or it is not compatible with artificial intelligence? So all these challenges are there. And at last, the major challenge is over dependence on artificial intelligence. If doctors start depending on AI for every information, then what's the use of a doctor? And secondly, how can you rely on a machine? Who is more superior when it comes to intelligence, whether it is human brain, human judgment, or it is the artificial intelligence? So this is a big question or a big challenge. Now, when we know all of these challenges, all of these risks, we can come up with some solutions, at least some way forward. First would be, we need to provide a robust regulatory framework. We said that our laws are not enough. So let's come up with a big framework, not just at the national level. See, I'm saying in India, we do not have much laws, but on the international level also, we do not have much laws as such to regulate artificial intelligence. So this is the first step we need to take. Second, there is issue of this bias. So what we can do, we can provide diverse data to this artificial intelligence. If the data comes to it only from USA, then there is a chance that it will be biased. But the data comes from all the parts of the world. It comes from Namibia also, from India also, from Australia also. In that case, we can say that the data will be very much diverse and the quality of this AI will be very much reliable. It will not have any kind of bias. Then moving ahead, if we talk about the human oversight, we can say that, see, AI should not replace human brains or human intelligence. It should complement it. So doctors should make use of artificial intelligence to make their work better. They should not completely rely on it. They should make use of it. Human oversight should always be there. So upper hand should be there only with the human beings. Okay? Then those individuals who are working in the healthcare sectors, for example, whether it is doctors or the nurse or any other person who is working there, all these individuals need some kind of a training, and that training we call as capacity building. If you build their capacity to understand this technology, then they can use it better. Then we need to focus on the public trust also. Now, where is this trust angle comes into picture? So we said that the decision-making process of AI, we do not know how it makes its decisions. So how will people actually trust on AI if they do not know its decision-making process? So we need to ensure that this decision-making process becomes very much reliable. So the scientists or the engineers need to work on this part. And at last, as far as government is concerned, government should focus on the investment part. See, if you focus on the developing countries do not have much infrastructure. And when it comes to India also, we too lack the infrastructure. So we need to make investment. Now this investment could be government investment or private investment. And this investment will take place in the technical aspect. For example, AI needs to process lot of data in one go. So you require high-speed data processing systems. You need data storage system. Then you need cutting-edge AI tools. For all these, you require money. So investment is must.
Students, the title of the next topic is The United Nations the World Needs. So in this article, we'll try to understand about the international body, United Nations, the challenges it is facing or going through, and what can be done to make the functioning of United Nations more effective and more efficient. right? So you can map this topic under GS paper 2, important international institutions and their mandate. A PYQ, discuss the impediments, that is hurdles, India is facing in its pursuit of a permanent seat in the United Nations Security Council. So we'll try to address the answer to this question in the explanation. What is the context? Now, there's so many global crises happening around the world. We have the Israel-Hamas war, Russia-Ukraine war, civil war in the African continent, African region, right? But somehow the United Nations is not able to address these challenges, which means the United Nations as of now has become an ineffective body. Why? Because it is failing to address the global challenges. Now, what is United Nations? It is the government of the entire world. We have the governments for every country. So, for each and every country, we have a common government known by the name United Nations. The author tries to argue that United Nations is a body that is shaped by the Western countries' mindset, which means somehow the Western countries do not want to lose their influence in the United Nations. And given that the summit of United Nations is about to take place, the author of the article tries to suggest that the other developing countries should try to push reforms in the United Nations. An emerging country like India should lead the role to ensure that reforms are undertaken in the United Nations. What is United Nations? It was founded in the year 1945, that is after the end of Second World War. The purpose was to prevent any major world wars. What is the objective? To promote peace, security and international cooperation among all the countries. Initially, the United Nations started with 51 countries. 51 countries were members of United Nations, but now it has 193 countries, which means it represents almost all the nations. Next, the objective is to maintain international peace. There should be peace throughout the world, and the United Nations tries to develop what? Friendly relations among the nations. How? By promoting human rights and encouraging social and economic development, which means overall development of the people of the world. Now, United Nations has 6 principal organs. Very, very important to remember. 1, the United Nations General Assembly. It's like the parliament. 2nd, United Nations Security Council. It is the most important and powerful body of the United Nations. 3rd is the Economic and Social Council. 3rd, 4th is the International Court of Justice, and 5th is the Secretariat. The 6th one has been abolished now, the Trusteeship Council. So now it has 5 principal or 5 most important organs of the United Nations: General Assembly, Security Council, then Economic and Social Council, International Court of Justice, and the last is the Secretariat. These are the 5 most important organs of the United Nations. Now, as I told you, Security Council, it's like Cabinet Secretariat, right? The Cabinet Secretariat is the most powerful body in our country, right? Why? Because it has a power to take decisions. Same with the respect to United Nations, it is the Security Council, which is the most powerful body in the United Nations. Why? Because it has a power to take important decisions. Important decisions like to start a war, to attack a country. It has got that power. It has 15 members. Now, out of 15 members, 5 are permanent members. They will always be a part of United Nations Security Council, and 10 are non-permanent members. So, if you get a question asking the number of members in UNSC, it is 15 and not 5. And who are these 5 permanent countries? US, UK, France, Russia and China. The objective of UNSC is to address threats to global peace and security. Their main objective is to ensure there is peace throughout the world. And then the agencies of the United Nations like the World Health Organization, UNESCO, UNICEF, and programs like the United Nations Development Program, the Food Program, right? These programs and agencies, the objective is to address the global challenges like health, education, development, and humanitarian crisis. Which means, in short, United Nations is a body responsible for addressing all the major challenges that the world is facing, be it terrorism, be it the hunger crisis, be it the humanitarian disasters, etc. Right? Now, let us try to discuss the challenges and issues of the United Nations. First is the outdated structure and imbalance of power, which means as of now, the structure of United Nations is outdated. Why? Because there have been no reforms in the United Nations since 1945. So, I am asking a question. Is the global situation the same as it was in the year 1945? No. Which means the United Nations should have changed as per the changing world. But unfortunately, it has not changed. The current structure reflects the global realities of the 20th century. But now the situation has changed. So, United Nations should reform or change, but unfortunately, it is not to be the case. So, then imbalance of power. For example, countries like India, Brazil, and those from Africa and Latin America, they remain underrepresented. Now, despite the fact that the other countries like Brazil, India, countries from Africa and Latin America are growing in power, but they do not have a say in taking major decisions in the United Nations. First problem. Second is the global power shifts and resurgent nationalism. Now, you see that the world order is changing. Why? One, because of nationalism, because of protectionism, and then the resurgence of the interstate wars. We have the Russia, Ukraine, Israel, Hamas, right? And then there are also conflicts in the African continent. But somehow, because of the changing global power shifts, the United Nations should actually address the power shift or the changing world order by addressing or by mediating effectively. But the United Nations has lost the ability to intervene decisively. Why? Because there are internal divisions in the United Nations. For example, as I told you, the 5 countries are the most powerful countries in the world or the United Nations. These are the 5 permanent members of the United Nations Security Council. For example, let's say the world decides to attack Iran, right? But now here, Russia uses her veto power to obstruct the resolution in the United Nations. So, for example, let's say if the world decides to attack, let's say Iran, which means all the 5 countries in the United Nations Security Council should be in agreement with it. If any country is not okay with the world attacking Iran, the world cannot proceed with attacking Iran. That's how the veto power of the permanent members of the United Nations Security Council is. I hope you are getting my point. And because of the divisions between, let's say, there are 5 countries as I told you, US, France, Russia, UK and China. So, we see that there is a divide between the West and the East, right? Russia does not have a good relation with these Western countries, same is the case with China. So, whenever these countries initiate a resolution, these countries block it. And whenever these countries initiate a resolution, these countries block it. Because of the internal divisions, the United Nations is unable to intervene effectively. This is the problem, second problem. The third is peacekeeping and conflict resolution. What is peacekeeping? Which means United Nations has got its own army, known by the name United Nations peacekeeping body or mission. Now, whenever United Nations is supposed to act to end a war, let's say Israel-Hamas, or let's say Russia-Ukraine. Now, United Nations is supposed to send her troops to stop the ongoing conflict. But unfortunately, the United Nations peacekeeping, which is the army of United Nations, is unable to do so. Why? Because they do not have resources. There is lack of consensus. If one country says yes, the other country is opposing it. There are political disagreements. And that's the reason the United Nations is not able to mediate effectively. Next is humanitarian crisis and climate change. Now, whenever there are global conflicts, United Nations is supposed to act or supposed to provide humanitarian needs like food, shelter, temporary shelter. But unfortunately, because of the logistical challenges, no funds and the geopolitical tensions, United Nations is unable to provide humanitarian help to the people who are suffering. Again, the challenges. At the same time, the United Nations efforts to address climate change is also affected because of the internal divisions. For example, when Donald Trump was the president of the United States of America, he withdrew from the Paris Agreement. Now, Paris Agreement is a global agreement. So again, because of the internal division and conflict, the United Nations is not able to act effectively and efficiently, because of which the people are suffering. Economic and development paralysis. Now, the United Nations development goals, including the sustainable development goals, which are 19 in number, they are facing problems, which means United Nations, like every government, has a goal of development. Similarly, United Nations has a goal of developing the entire world, but because United Nations is facing obstacles or challenges. Why? Because of poverty, inequality and slow economic growth in many regions. For example, let's say Africa, Latin America, Middle East. These are some of the challenges and issues the United Nations as a world body is facing. Now, let me also help you with India's role in United Nations reforms. Now, India has advocated or supported her role, or India wants a permanent seat in the United Nations Security Council. As I told, there are 5 permanent members. So, why is India claiming a permanent seat in the United Nations Security Council? One, because India is the world's largest democracy. India is emerging as a global power. Then India has contributed heavily in the United Nations peacekeeping mission, which means of all the peacekeeping missions of the United Nations, India has contributed her troops to the United Nations peacekeeping missions. So, whenever, for example, the Korean War, right, or let's say the war in the African continent, India has always contributed her troops in the United Nations peacekeeping mission. And that's the reason India feels that India deserves a place in the permanent seat or United Nations Security Council permanent seat. Then India has always championed the needs of Global South. Now, Global South represents the poor countries. Global North represents the rich countries. Global South, poor countries. Now, India has always championed the cause of Global South. India has always represented or ensured that the needs of the poor countries or developing countries is put forth before the United Nations. For example, India was a leader of non-alignment movement, right? So here you see that India has always tried to address the needs of the developing and poor countries. India also feels that there has to be financial contribution, and financial contribution should be made more by the Western countries, or there has to be fair financial contribution and more representation from different parts of the world in the United Nations Security Council. Now, does it mean that as United Nations is facing so many challenges, does it mean that United Nations should be abolished? No. We need United Nations more than ever. So let us try to understand the relevance of United Nations in the 21st century. The first is to address the global crisis like the climate change, pandemics and economic inequality. So if United Nations is to be abolished, which body is going to address the global crisis? So we do not have any answer to it. And that's the reason it is important to reform the United Nations rather than complete abolishing it. Which means United Nations is the only platform where the countries can cooperate, negotiate to find a solution to the global crisis. Second is the humanitarian assistance and development. Now, because of the global conflicts happening around the world, which body is responsible for providing humanitarian need? It is only United Nations that can provide humanitarian assistance, especially whenever any part of the world is affected because of natural disasters, global conflict and other crises. So, United Nations is the only body which can mobilize resources from different countries and coordinate the global relief efforts. Global diplomacy and conflict mediation. No matter, United Nations has many shortcomings. Despite the fact so, United Nations is the only body or only responsible body where dialogue can be held. Diplomatic dialogue can be held and the conflicts can be mediated. And that's the reason it is very important that United Nations has to be reformed. For example, the United Nations Charter. Charter, it is the Constitution of United Nations. It provides a framework for international law and justice, which means the Constitution of United Nations provides a framework where the conflicts can be resolved peacefully. And that's the reason we need United Nations more than ever. So, how can the United Nations be reformed? First, it is very important to foster consensus among the countries, right? So, it is very important that the United Nations should address the needs of each and every part or every continent of the world. For example, there has to be representation from the regions like Latin America, African continent. So, if you talk about the United Nations Security Council or the permanent members, now there is no country from Africa, there is no country from Latin America, right? Europe is only represented and Asia is underrepresented, which means in order to facilitate inclusive dialogue, countries from other regions should also be made a part of the United Nations. Second, we have to change the United Nations Charter, which means we have to change the Constitution of United Nations to have the representation of different countries. And for that, to change the United Nations Charter, we need 2/3 majority in the General Assembly. Now, General Assembly is an assembly of 193 countries and ratification of all the P5 members. Let's say, for example, India should be made a permanent member of United Nations Security Council, for which 2/3 majority is required in the General Assembly and all the 5 countries should agree to India's inclusion. Now, do you think China will allow or China will agree India to be a part of UNSC? This is a problem, right? Third, addressing veto power. Now, these P5 countries are actually misusing their veto power. This veto power was given to these 5 countries to make the world peaceful, which means these 5 countries have the responsibility to ensure that no conflict should take place. But these countries are misusing their veto power, and that's the reason their veto power should be limited or veto power should be completely abolished. This is the third point. And then it is very important to ensure that the working or functioning of the United Nations is transparent and they are held accountable, for which the bureaucracy or the officials need to be more accountable. The officials have to be more accountable, right? And then strengthening financial stability. As of now, the United Nations is lacking the resources. So the countries have to come together to address the financial problems of the United Nations, which means there has to be, or the financial or the contribution to the United Nations, this system has to be changed, has to be made more fair, which means financial reforms should aim to eliminate the errors and improve the fiscal management of the United Nations. Which means that in the 21st century, we need United Nations more than ever. Right? And that's the reason it is very important for the United Nations to undergo reforms and reflect the current realities. Only then United Nations will act or will be a key player in the global governance, and people will trust the United Nations. I hope you have understood each and every dimension of the second chapter, that is United Nations and reforms, right?